Hello, everybody, and welcome to Irish Hypnotherapy Conference 2026 Meet the Speaker series. Today, we are talking to Kaz Riley. Kaz, welcome back to Dublin.
I can't wait to come back. I'm very much looking forward to it.
It's going to be an amazing few days, actually 3 days now this time, so it's going to be absolutely wonderful. You were in Dublin 2 years ago, and the room was full. Everybody loved your talk. This time you are coming back, and your title is Erotic Mind Awakening Fantasy and Pleasure Through Hypnosis. Do
Hmm.
you want to tell us what all that's about?
Well, it sounds kind of interesting, doesn't it? And it
It's,
and it
yeah,
absolutely is. But what, in essence, we're talking about is this wonderful thing called erotic wellness, and it's often something that people feel a lot of shame about, like having fantasies. We all have fantasies. We have fantasies from being little kids, when we were superheroes and princesses and all of that kind of stuff. And as we get older, our fantasies mature as well, or they hopefully do. And then we also have our fantasy world within our sexual lives. And it's actually really key to having good sexual wellness is having good erotic wellness. So we're going to be talking a lot about how not to have shame about that, what
okay.
erotic wellness actually is, how to find it, and how to give yourself or others permission to have it. So we're gonna do a group session while we're there, so that we'll all go away feeling really good about our
Everybody will
erotic
be feeling
wellness.
really energized and have a great evening.
Yeah. So it was going to be great. So that in
Okay, so
essence is what we're doing.
okay, cool. Um, so the shame is one thing, and I get it coming from Catholic Ireland. I completely understand that.
Mhm.
I don't think it's unique to Catholic Ireland, but is when you talk about the fantasy, you talking about variety? Is that where you're going with that? Like,
It's
or
very much about, so it's really interesting when I work with people that have trouble with this, and it's often a huge part of somebody's libido. So if somebody's libido is a bit flat, one of the things that's often missing is their erotic wellness and their world of inner fantasy, if you like. And they'll often say to me is, I don't have an imagination, or I don't think my fantasies are good enough. When actually it's about understanding that what is erotic to you is probably not erotic to me, and what's erotic to me might not be erotic to you. It's about the freedom to explore in your mind without the judgment. So it can be having a wide variety of things. It could be just having one thing and not feeling shame about enjoying that fantasy, because as I tell all my clients, there are no thought police. We can think what we like.
yeah,
There are no
absolutely.
limits, actually, really, about what we can think and imagine and enjoy in the privacy of our own minds. And things like people say, well, is it cheating if I think about somebody else other than my partner? And, my answer is always, well, when we become in a partnership, usually we don't get blinkers on and the thought police don't move into our minds. Our behavior can dictate what happens there, but what we think about is perfectly fine. So it's deconstructing a lot of social constructs or constrictions, really, about, you think about the Catholicism, the dirty thoughts, for example,
Yeah,
which are really normal in adult humans. So,
of
it's
course.
all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so it's taken away the shame behind it to allow people the freedom to explore.
Yeah,
Is that
pretty
kind of
much.
where it goes?
Yeah.
Okay. So in getting that, what is the benefit beyond? Is there a benefit beyond just that? Is it just that, or is there a benefit beyond, i.e., people have more energy in life, people have more. We know that when we release the positive chemicals in our brain, we feel better about ourselves. So therefore,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And remember, our fantasy world is a part of our creative world. So everything that we do, we have to think up first. So if we try and restrict part of our creative world, we restrict all of our creative world. So by being free in our minds in many different areas, and freeing up our mind in more areas, then we become more creative, which makes us feel happier because we move through the world in a much more creative, and we see the opportunities rather than seeing the obstacles, don't we? We're in that kind of mindset. So
absolutely, yeah, of
yeah,
course.
so it has a far-reaching. Our sexual health in all its forms has very positive impact or a negative impact in our general world, depending on where we are. But our fantasy world, our creative world, is a really essential part of all of those things.
Okay, so forgive me if I'm going off point here, but as human beings, we have like physical needs, we have psychological needs, and when we balance those two and live kind of a normal, healthy, like in all aspects of it, not shut part of it down,
Mhm.
we actually live a more creative life, a happier life. And that's
Absolutely. And we
you're
also
tapping into a
have,
part of that.
yeah, and forgive me for interrupting. We also have erotic needs. Part of
Okay.
being an adult is being sensual and sexual, even if we're not in a relationship, even if we're not being sexually active. Our eroticism is a very key part to who we are, and a key part to our happiness and vitality and our drive and our success as well, actually.
Mm.
So it's we have our psychological needs, our physical needs, and our erotic needs, which actually is in between those two.
All going together. Okay. That makes perfect sense. And for someone who's been doing this, because you're doing this since the mid 90s, I think, is it? Am I
Yeah,
right about that?
yeah. I've been in full-time practice way over 20 years now.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
So have you seen kind of shame levels, if that's one of the, I suppose, limiting beliefs? Have
Mhm.
you seen that come down over time as society's opened up, or is that just perception?
That is perception. So the desire to overcome shame, people realizing that maybe they shouldn't have it, that's definitely increased. But the incidence of shame has very much stayed the same or even grown in some areas. So body shame, for example, is
All right.
much higher. And the misinformation about sex and eroticism and fantasy, and people struggling with that has also increased. And I think that's a direct increase or a direct correlation to the increase of the availability of pornography because people aren't
Okay.
having to use their imaginations. And actually, that's really detrimental. So, this is the other part of why our erotic wellness, our internal erotic wellness, is really important for
Can
helping
you
people
explain that
overcome.
last part?
In terms of if somebody, say you've got somebody who's got a very high pornography use, for example, they're consuming a lot of it. They're often watching different things, but they're not really imagining usually. So
Hmm.
it becomes a
Okay.
very voyeuristic, alone kind of thing. And then when they're with a person, they have real trouble with that because there's not much of this has been internalized. Their sexual arousal and reaction, if you like, has been attached to watching something on a screen rather than something that's very internalized and created within them.
Hmm.
So this can have really big implications actually when it comes to how a person's body reacts when they're then with another person. So
Okay.
that's another key part of erotic wellness as well.
Gotcha. And I imagine expectation of pornography where everything's perfect. And of course, life is not perfect. That's probably the other side of it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And good sex generally doesn't look like what it does on pornography either. So this is the other thing where then you get somebody watching or even fantasizing about what they've seen on pornography rather than something that's been internally driven by them of what they
Gotcha.
might find arousing, so the trigger becomes something they remembered watching rather than maybe the gorgeous person they saw walking into Tesco's on Tuesday afternoon, which is where, that's kind of where we want to be, because
Yeah.
it's an internal world. Yeah.
Okay. That is wonderful. So the presentation, you're going to cover pretty much most of those things
Yes.
and take everybody through an internal experience.
An internal experience, grounded in permission to feel a certain way if they choose to. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait. I'm so looking forward to it. It's great to have you back.
I'm
Genuinely.
very happy to be back.
All right. Listen, thank you to everybody for watching. We will see you in Dublin on the 24th, 25th, and 26th of April. All details are on www.irishhypnotherapyconference.ie. It's going to be 3 days of just learning, fun, and connecting, and it's going to be great. Thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful day.